This countdown listed the 8 most catastrophic wingsuit flying deaths ever recorded. They were fatalities in which elite skill and extensive preparation gave way to moments of chaos. From invisible mountain thermals to microscopic equipment flaws, each incident exposed how the smallest variable could turn a world-class flight into disaster regardless of the pilot's experience. The sequence opened with number 8. June 12, 2018. Alessandro Moretti, age 34, stood at his usual launch point above the Tre Cime di Lavaredo in the Dolomites. With over 2,400 jumps and a reputation for meticulous planning, he had flown the narrow couloir below more than 50 times. The morning air was crisp, the weather reading stable, and every piece of equipment passed his careful inspection. At dawn, he leapt, carving a line just feet from the rock walls, a route mapped and memorized through years of experience. But an unseasonable thermal updraft, stronger than any forecast predicted, rose through the couloir. In less than a second, the updraft altered his path by 8 feet, pushing him closer to the granite than planned. Moretti banked to correct, but at 110 miles per hour, the margin vanished. His wingtip clipped the rock, sending him into a 900-foot fall. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at the scene. The cause was massive blunt force trauma and multiple organ ruptures. The investigation confirmed the presence of the rogue thermal. Equipment checks revealed no faults. In the aftermath, new thermal monitoring requirements and mandatory weather holds were adopted for alpine proximity flights, a direct response to a loss that preparation alone could not prevent. August 19, 2019. Maya Richardson, a 29-year-old Australian wingsuit pilot, launched from the edge of Kjerag in Norway. With over 1,800 wingsuit flights and 4 world records, she was known for a precise, data-driven approach to proximity flying and for an emphasis on precision. The day's plan called for a 15-foot clearance along the cliff face, a margin she calculated and rehearsed down to the decimal. Every piece of gear passed inspection, and the helmet camera mount, a standard accessory, was secured for documentation. But as she flew, aerodynamic drag from the camera mount slowed her by 2 miles per hour, enough to reduce her actual clearance to 11 feet. As she passed a small outcropping, her helmet struck the rock, and the impact caused immediate unconsciousness. Her body continued its trajectory, impacting the fjord below. Emergency teams recovered her remains from the water 3 hours later. Autopsy confirmed catastrophic head trauma, a cervical fracture, and drowning while unconscious. Post-accident analysis, including wind tunnel tests, verified that the camera mount's drag was sufficient to alter her flight path. The incident led to new certification standards for helmet mounts and mandatory drag testing for all mounted accessories, underscoring how even minor equipment changes can prove fatal at high speeds. October 7, 2020. Dmitry Volkov arrived in Lauterbrunnen Valley, Switzerland, with a new wingsuit prototype in his gear bag. At age 41, Volkov was already known as a technical innovator, an engineer with over 3,200-plus jumps and a reputation for methodical design. That morning, he set out not to break a record, but to test his latest creation, a custom wing with increased surface area developed after months of simulation and ground trials. Weather conditions met his requirements, and the flight plan called for a controlled descent, flaring for landing at a speed calculated to keep him safely above stall. The suit's theoretical stall speed was set at 27 miles per hour. Volkov's logs and pre-flight notes showed confidence in his numbers, but as he flared at 31 miles per hour near the valley floor, the wing lost lift abruptly. The stall speed was actually 4 miles per hour higher than his calculations predicted, a margin invisible until the final seconds. In less than a second, Volkov dropped into the treetops, striking branches at 45 feet before hitting the ground below. His parachute remained unused. Rescuers arrived quickly, but he was pronounced dead 28 minutes later. Cause of death was severe internal bleeding, ruptured spleen and liver, and multiple traumatic injuries. Post-crash analysis of the suit and recovered simulation files revealed the miscalculation. Investigators found the design's stall threshold had been underestimated. The findings led to new requirements, mandatory third-party testing, and independent stall speed verification for all custom or modified wingsuit designs, a direct response to a technical error that even expertise could not forgive. July 14, 2021. Lucas Tanner, age 26, prepared for a wingsuit flight in Chamonix, deep in the French Alps. With over 1,500 jumps and a reputation for capturing some of the sport's most watched footage, Tanner approached the day's run as both pilot and filmmaker. The plan called for threading a narrow gap he had flown before, but this time the camera angle demanded something extra, a 3 degrees steeper approach to frame the shot for a new documentary. That minor adjustment pushed his speed from 115 to 127 miles per hour. In wingsuit flight, even a single degree of pitch or a few miles per hour can transform risk. As Tanner entered the gap, a pocket of wind shear drifted him 6 feet off his intended line. At that speed, the margin vanished instantly. His helmet struck the rock face, the impact captured by his own camera. Death was immediate: traumatic brain injury, skull fracture, and massive internal hemorrhaging. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at the scene. Review of the flight data and video confirmed the steeper approach and the chain of events that followed. Local weather stations recorded the wind shear at the exact time of the flight. In the aftermath, the incident forced a reckoning within the wingsuit and filmmaking communities. The pursuit of viral footage had altered the physics of flight, narrowing margins that were already razor-thin. New protocols now require risk assessments for all high-risk filming runs, and social media platforms began to scrutinize the safety of extreme content, linking digital ambitions to real-world consequences. March 22, 2022. Sarah Chen prepared for a high-altitude wingsuit jump above Paris Valley, California. With 2,100 jumps and a doctorate in aerodynamics, she was regarded as a leader in technical safety and material analysis. On the ground, Chen conducted a detailed review of temperature gradients and wind patterns, double-checking every seam and fastener. The flight plan called for a 2-minute descent from 14,000 feet with conservative margins built into every phase. At 8,000 feet, a desert thermal produced an 18 miles per hour updraft, stronger than any forecast or historical data for the region. The vertical shear loaded the wingsuit beyond its rated stress limits. In less than a second, the fabric at the right wing seam failed. The tear created an asymmetric wing, sending Chen into an uncontrolled spin. She attempted to deploy her parachute, but the entanglement accelerated her fall. The seam ruptured under an unexpected load. Chen struck the ground at 95 miles per hour. The coroner's report documented multiple fractures, internal decapitation, and severe trauma. No evidence of successful parachute deployment was found. Post-accident inspection revealed the failure point, a seam that ruptured under a load far exceeding manufacturer tests. Meteorological records confirmed the presence of the rare vertical shear at the time of the jump. In the aftermath, wingsuit manufacturers revised their fabric testing standards, raising the required load thresholds for all new designs. Desert jump protocols were updated to include mandatory thermal avoidance training and stricter weather holds. Chen's death demonstrated that even the most scientific approach can be undone by the raw force of the environment, exposing the material limits beneath every calculated risk. September 3, 2022. Erik Hansen, age 38, stepped onto the Hardanger Bridge in Norway, ready for a demonstration jump. With 4,100 jumps behind him and a reputation as a pioneer and instructor, Hansen was trusted to showcase the safest techniques in wingsuit proximity flight. His approach to every flight was methodical, including equipment checks, safety briefings, and rehearsals. That morning, every seam, fastener, and zipper was inspected. The plan called for a controlled pass with a 12-foot margin from the bridge's main cable, a line he had flown before without incident. In flight, a hidden flaw developed. The right leg wing's zipper, previously secure, began to open incrementally under aerodynamic load. Frame-by-frame review of his helmet camera later revealed the failure. The zipper teeth separated over several seconds, unnoticed as the suit inflated. As the gap widened, loose fabric created drag on the right leg, subtly pulling it back. At 98 miles per hour, even a small imbalance caused a dramatic shift. Hansen's trajectory veered 12 feet off course, erasing his planned margin. He struck the bridge's main cable with full force. The impact severed both the cable and his body, resulting in traumatic amputation and immediate exsanguination. His body fell 200 feet and was recovered by responders 45 minutes later. Post-accident investigation focused on the zipper. Fatigue testing confirmed that repeated cycles and exposure to wind loads could cause gradual separation, especially in older suits. Maintenance logs showed the zipper had passed visual inspection, but internal wear was not visible without disassembly. The findings led to sweeping changes. Double redundant zippers became mandatory, and formalized inspection protocols were adopted for all high-risk jumps. Hansen's death, captured in procedural detail and forensic analysis, underscored that even the smallest component failure could override thousands of hours of experience, making equipment integrity and redundancy non-negotiable in wingsuit flight. May 18, 2023. Natasha Volkova, age 27, prepared for a wingsuit jump that had never been attempted before, a cave exit from Grotta del Vento in Tuscany. With 1,900 jumps and 3 European championships, Volkova was recognized for technical precision and a fearless approach to new challenges. The flight was planned over months, with repeated site visits, airflow studies, and rehearsals. Every detail was scrutinized, including gear checks, wind readings, and contingency plans. The cave opening was mapped for clearance, and simulations accounted for known wind patterns. On the morning of the jump, conditions matched her requirements. Equipment functioned perfectly, and telemetry confirmed all systems were green. Volkova launched from the cave mouth at 7:14 a.m. Initial glide was stable, but within 2 seconds her suit encountered a pocket of invisible rotor turbulence, an eddy formed by the confined geometry of the cave and external wind pressure. The airflow, undetectable from inside, spun her off axis and induced violent tumbling. Over the next 4 seconds, she lost 400 feet of altitude, unable to regain control as the suit inverted and roll rates spiked beyond recovery limits. She stabilized briefly, but her body remained inverted, head below feet, with the suit profile now fighting gravity rather than generating lift. At 87 miles per hour, Volkova struck the slope back first, sustaining a severed spinal cord at the T4 vertebra, multiple fractures, and catastrophic internal trauma. She remained conscious for approximately 3 minutes, based on audio from her helmet microphone, and was pronounced dead 19 minutes after impact by emergency medical teams. The post-accident investigation used computational fluid dynamics airflow mapping and wind tunnel tests to reconstruct the event. Analysis confirmed the presence of a highly localized rotor at the cave exit, a feature that standard weather checks and ground-based anemometers could not detect. The turbulence was unpredictable and severe enough to destabilize even the most experienced pilot. As a direct result, cave exits for wingsuit flights were banned internationally, and new requirements for detailed airflow mapping were introduced for all complex terrain exits. Volkova's death became a reference point for the hidden dangers of confined airflow environments, where even exhaustive preparation and elite skill could not overcome invisible forces waiting at the threshold. November 9, 2023. Maxwell Donovan, age 44, prepared to launch at sunrise between the sandstone towers of Monument Valley. With 5,800 jumps logged over 22 years, he was recognized worldwide as a master instructor and the author of the sport's most widely used training manual. His approach was methodical, his reputation built on caution and patience. The morning conditions were clear, windless, and familiar. The 400-foot gap between monuments had become routine. Donovan had flown this line more than 200 times without incident. Every aspect of his gear was checked and rechecked, from the suit seams to his altimeter calibration. 2 weeks earlier, Donovan had switched to a new brand of contact lenses prescribed for mild astigmatism. The lenses provided sharper distance vision, but introduced a subtle change in focal length and depth perception, an effect measured in millimeters and invisible to the naked eye. Optometric analysis would later show that, under certain lighting and contrast conditions, the lenses could shift perceived distance by up to 4.5 feet at the ranges typical in proximity flight. This shift was small in absolute terms, but not negligible for margin-dependent maneuvers. Donovan launched from the ridge at 6:07 a.m. The initial glide was smooth, his altitude and speed matching previous flights. As he approached the gap, telemetry recorded a slight deviation from his intended line, less than 5 feet closer to the left monument than planned. At 120 miles per hour, this margin was critical. Donovan initiated an aggressive corrective turn, banking sharply to regain his usual clearance. The maneuver increased his angle of attack and momentarily reduced his airspeed below the wingsuit safe threshold. At 180 feet above the valley floor, the wingsuit stalled. In the next second, his body lost lift and began a rapid, uncontrolled descent. Donovan attempted to deploy his parachute, but the altitude was insufficient for full canopy inflation. The impact was violent. Polytrauma consistent with high-speed ground collision included fractured skull, ruptured aorta, collapsed lungs, and a broken neck. Emergency responders reached the site within 20 minutes. Donovan was pronounced dead 52 minutes after impact. The investigation reconstructed the flight using helmet camera footage, GPS telemetry, and optometric simulation. Forensic review confirmed that the new lenses shifted his depth perception enough to misjudge the monument proximity, triggering the fatal chain of events. Medical examiners documented a direct causal link between the visual miscalculation, the resulting overcorrection, and the subsequent stall. In response, regulatory bodies introduced mandatory vision testing for all high-risk wingsuit pilots, annual medical exams, and restrictions on unproven optical equipment. Equipment standards and pre-flight vision checks became part of formal training and certification. Donovan's death, despite unmatched experience and exhaustive preparation, became the definitive case showing that even the smallest sensory change can defeat every safeguard. The lesson was absolute. In proximity flight, human perception remained the final, unfixable variable. Across all 8 tragedies, one pattern stood out. In wingsuit flight, expertise sharpened the blade of risk. No amount of training, preparation, or reputation could override the physics of a single miscalculation. As technology and skill increased, so too did the margins for fatal error. Human limits remained absolute, and nature never negotiated. If this left you thinking, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more extreme truth.